On a chilly November morning, the wind danced with the fallen leaves, carrying whispers of forgotten promises. Jacob stood on the old wooden bridge, his eyes tracing the gentle curves of the river below. It was their bridge, his and Lily's. Every Saturday for the past 12 years, they would come here to cast pebbles into the water, watching as the ripples expanded and disappeared, much like the moments they shared. Lily was everything to Jacob. From the moment he first held her tiny, wriggling body, he knew his life had changed forever. She was his light, his purpose, and his joy. Their bond was more than just blood. It was a deep connection of souls that understood each other without words. But now, the bridge stood empty, a silent witness to the passage of time. Jacob gripped the weathered railing, the cold biting into his fingers. The weight of absence was heavy on his heart, almost unbearable. His thoughts drifted back to the last time they had been here together. It was a bright, sunny day, filled with the laughter of a 12-year-old girl who believed in fairy tales and the unconditional love of her father. Lily had thrown a handful of pebbles into the water, her eyes sparkling with the innocent delight that only a child could possess. Jacob had watched her, his heart swelling with pride and affection. She was growing up too fast, but in moments like these, she was still his little girl. "Daddy, do you think wishes come true?" she had asked, her voice tinged with a hope that he desperately wanted to nurture. Jacob had smiled, kneeling down to her level. "I believe they do, sweetheart. As long as you keep believing, anything is possible." Lily had nodded, her face serious with contemplation. "Then I wish for us to always be together. No matter what." Jacob had felt a pang of fear then, a fleeting shadow crossing his mind. But he had pushed it aside, pulling her into a tight hug. "Always, Lily. Always." But always, it seemed, was a fragile promise. 3 weeks later, Lily was gone. The house was eerily quiet without her. Every corner echoed with her absence, every room a shrine to the memories they had created together. Jacob wandered through the hallways, his footsteps hollow on the wooden floors. The walls were adorned with photographs, snapshots of happier times, of birthdays and holidays, of ordinary days turned extraordinary by her presence. He stopped at her bedroom door, his hand hovering over the doorknob. It had been a month since the accident, but he hadn't been able to bring himself to enter her room. It felt like stepping into a past that was too painful to confront. The door creaked open, and Jacob was enveloped in the scent of lavender, a fragrance that always clung to Lily's clothes and hair. Her room was exactly as she had left it, a chaotic blend of dolls and books, of sketches and posters. Jacob walked over to her desk, where a half-finished drawing lay untouched. It was a picture of them on the bridge, holding hands and smiling. Tears welled up in his eyes as he traced the lines of their faces, the love and happiness captured in every stroke of her pencil. "Lily," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I miss you so much." The silence that followed was deafening. It was the kind of silence that smothered you, that made you feel like you were drowning in a sea of grief. Jacob sank to the floor, clutching the drawing to his chest. The pain was raw, searing through him with a ferocity that left him breathless. He had lost his wife, Emily, to cancer 5 years ago. But losing Lily was a different kind of agony, one that shattered him in ways he couldn't comprehend. For days, Jacob had wandered through life in a daze, unable to eat or sleep, consumed by the emptiness that Lily had left behind. Friends and family had come and gone, offering their condolences, their words of comfort. But nothing could fill the void, the gaping hole that had swallowed his heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jacob found himself back at the bridge. The air was thick with the scent of rain, and the sky was painted in hues of purple and gold. He stood there, staring at the water, lost in the echoes of a time that felt both distant and near. A rustling sound caught his attention, and he turned to see a small figure standing at the edge of the bridge. It was a girl, no older than Lily, with long, dark hair and eyes that mirrored the twilight sky. She looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and sympathy, as if she could see the weight he carried. "Hello," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Jacob blinked, surprised by her presence. "Hello," he replied, his voice rough from disuse. The girl took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his face. "You're Jacob, aren't you?" He nodded, wondering how she knew his name. "Yes." "Who are you?" "My name is Sarah," she said, her lips curving into a sad smile. "I knew your daughter, Lily. We were in the same art class." Jacob's heart clenched at the mention of Lily's name. "You knew her?" Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with a sorrow that seemed too deep for someone so young. "She was my best friend. She talked about you all the time. She said you were her hero." Jacob felt a lump form in his throat, the tears threatening to spill over. "She was my everything," he whispered. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "She wanted me to give you this. She wrote it the day before her voice trailed off, but Jacob understood. With trembling hands, he unfolded the paper. It was a letter, written in Lily's neat, childish handwriting. "Dear Daddy, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there with you anymore. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't want to leave you. I wanted to stay and make more memories with you. But sometimes, things happen that we can't control. I want you to know that I'm not scared. I know you'll be okay, because you're the strongest person I know. You always told me that love is the most powerful thing in the world. And I believe that. I believe that even though I'm not with you, our love will keep us connected. Please don't be sad, Daddy. Remember all the good times we had together. Remember our Saturdays at the bridge, our bedtime stories, and our silly games. Remember how much I loved you. And promise me that you'll keep living your life. Keep smiling, keep dreaming, and keep loving. Because that's what I would want for you. I'll be watching over you, Daddy. Always. Love, Lily." The tears flowed freely now, streaming down Jacob's face as he clutched the letter to his heart. The pain was still there, a gnawing ache that he knew would never fully go away. But there was also a warmth, a flicker of light in the darkness. Lily's words were a balm to his wounded soul, a reminder that love transcended even death. Jacob looked up at Sarah, who was watching him with a kind of quiet understanding. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for bringing this to me." Sarah nodded, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She loved you so much, Mr. Jacob. She always said you were the best dad in the world." Jacob swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over him like a gentle blanket. "I loved her too," he whispered. "More than anything." They stood there in silence for a while, the only sound the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. Jacob felt a sense of peace wash over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in what seemed like an eternity. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time since Lily's death, he felt a glimmer of hope. Months passed, and the seasons changed. The bridge became a place of solace for Jacob, a sanctuary where he could feel close to Lily. He visited often, sometimes alone, sometimes with Sarah, who had become a source of comfort and strength. They would sit on the bridge and talk about Lily, sharing stories and memories, keeping her spirit alive in their hearts. Sarah's presence was a balm to Jacob's soul, a reminder that life went on even in the face of unimaginable loss. One crisp spring morning, as the first buds of new life began to bloom, Jacob stood on the bridge, looking out over the water. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the air was filled with the promise of new beginnings. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, smooth pebble. Holding it tightly in his hand, he whispered a silent prayer. For Lily, for Emily, for all the moments they had shared and all the ones they had lost. And for himself, for the courage to keep moving forward, to keep living and loving, even in the face of heartache. With a deep breath, he cast the pebble into the river, watching as it disappeared beneath the surface, sending ripples out into the world. He knew that somewhere, somehow, Lily was watching over him, her love a guiding light in the darkness. As he turned to leave, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew the pain would never fully go away, but he also knew that he wasn't alone. He had the memories, the love, and the promise of new beginnings. And in the end, that was enough. Years later, the bridge remained a sacred place for Jacob. He visited often, sometimes with Sarah, who had grown into a remarkable young woman, her spirit as bright and kind as Lily's had been. They continued to share stories, to laugh and cry, to remember and to dream. Jacob never forgot the lessons Lily had taught him, the power of love, the importance of living in the moment, and the strength to carry on. He kept her letter close, a cherished reminder of the bond they shared, a bond that transcended time and space. And every time he stood on the bridge, looking out over the water, he knew that Lily was with him. In the rustle of the leaves, in the whisper of the wind, in the ripples of the river, she was there, a part of him forever. Life went on, as it always does. There were new joys, new sorrows, new challenges. But through it all, Jacob carried Lily's love in his heart, a beacon of light in the darkest of times. And he knew, with unwavering certainty, that he would never walk alone.
you.